Samsung's new generation of foldable phones is here, and this is the compact model, the Galaxy Z Flip4. At first glance, it might seem a lot like last year's Z Flip3, but there are some refinements and improvements to be found here. I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's see what the Z Flip4 is all about in our full review. As you might expect, Samsung hasn't reinvented the wheel with the Galaxy Z Flip4. You've got the foldable inner screen protected within a clamshell form factor, and an outer screen that you can use while the device is folded. There are some upgrades here though, including a new chipset, a bigger battery, faster charging, and an improved main camera. Let's start off though with the design. It's very similar to the Z Flip 3, but with some small changes. You get a matte back and glossy frame, whereas last year there was a glossy back and matte frame. And the back panels are protected by tougher Gorilla Glass Victus Plus. Of course, just like last year, there is IPX8 ingress protection. That's protection against water, but not dust or sand. One refinement you'll find on the Z Flip 4 is that the armor aluminum hinge is slimmer. It seems just as sturdy though, and like last year, allows you to use the phone folded to whatever angle you'd like. The resistance means that opening the phone is more of a two-handed affair. You can manage it with one hand, but it's awkward. Another improvement this year is the slimmer bezels around the inner display. This makes for a nicer viewing experience. The crease in the middle is still present and noticeable though. The inner display overall is much the same. It's a 6.7-inch foldable AMOLED with a 1080p resolution and a 120Hz refresh rate. One small update is that the screen's adaptive refresh rate is even more dynamic. It now has support for as low as 1 Hz. The lowest we saw was 24 Hz, but the frame rate at which the UI is drawn would readily go down to 1 FPS for static content. As you'd expect, the display is sharp and contrasty, and it has HDR10+ support too. There are 2 color modes to choose from, and each is very accurate, and you can tune the color temperature beyond that in settings. The screen is also quite bright. We measured up to 800 nits maximum with the manual brightness slider, with the extra brightness mode enabled, and this can boost to 920 nits in auto mode in bright sun. While the Z Flip 4 is folded, there's a small 1.9-inch AMOLED cover screen which can act as an always-on display, but there is some extra functionality here too. Swiping in different directions can accomplish different things. Swiping down brings up quick toggle options. Swiping to the right calls up notifications. And swiping to the left gives you access to a number of different widgets. And if that isn't enough, you can also enable a standard always-on display on the inner screen as well. For audio, the Z Flip 4 has a pair of stereo speakers, with the earpiece acting as the second one. With a loudness score of just good, they're not quite as loud as last year. The audio quality is satisfying though, with nice vocals and highs, and some noticeable bass. You can wake up and unlock the Z Flip 4 with the fingerprint reader built into the power button. It's fast and responsive, but the high placement needs some getting used to. The Z Flip 4 can come with 128, 256, or 512 gigs of storage. That's not expandable through microSD though. And the interface of the phone is Samsung's One UI 4.1.1 on top of Android 12. It's very clean and snappy, yet feature-packed. What's unique on the foldable phones is a feature called Flex Mode. When partially folded, the phone will allow apps to split the interface in two, to make better use of the dual screens. This comes in especially handy with the camera app, allowing you to control the cameras while the phone is propped up, without having to touch and disturb the upper half. Otherwise, the interface here is pretty much the same that you'd get on Samsung's other flagships. You can find out more about One UI 4.1's features in our dedicated video. The Galaxy Z Flip 4 brings a new chipset, the latest Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Among the key improvements are better efficiency and a minor bump in performance. And as you'd expect, in benchmarks the numbers look good. When it comes to thermal management though, the Z Flip 4 falls behind most of the other flagships. In our stress tests, the phone was able to maintain its maximum performance level for only 5 minutes, and after that, it would throttle down to just 40% of that. So while the performance is great overall for most tasks, the Z Flip 4 might not be ideal if you're planning to do a lot of heavy gaming. One of the most notable updates you'll find compared to the Galaxy Z Flip 3 is a larger 3700 mAh battery. Unfortunately, we couldn't run our full suite of battery life tests here because our Z Flip 4 review unit is region locked. However, the results we did measure were considerably better than the Z Flip 3. The new model was able to provide almost 4 more hours in our web browsing test, and it also achieved over 2.5 more hours of video playback. We'll make sure to update the video description with the full endurance rating once we get our hands on another review unit. As usual, you don't get a charger in the box with the Z Flip 4, but still the charging has been upgraded to 25 watts wired and 15 watts wireless. With a proper wired adapter, we were able to charge the phone from 0 to 55% in 30 minutes, an improvement over last year despite the larger battery capacity. There's also support for reverse wireless charging if you need it. Now onto the cameras, and at first glance they seem the same as the previous model, a 12 megapixel main cam and 12 megapixel ultra wide. But the main cam now has a larger sensor with 1.8 micrometer pixels, like on the Galaxy S21 series, and here is coupled with a wider 24mm lens. During the day, photos shot from the main cam are outstanding. There is plenty of resolved detail, and the processing delivers a balanced and natural look. Dynamic range is good, but not over the top. Colors are vivid though, in Samsung fashion. There isn't a huge difference compared to the Z Flip 3, but you do see better definition in fine details like foliage here. Portraits are superb, with detailed and well-exposed subjects, and very proficient separation. Photos from the ultra-wide camera are quite likable, with a surprising amount of detail and plenty of sharpness. The colors, contrast, and dynamic range are great and match the main cam well. When the light is low, the Z Flip 4 can enable an automatic night mode. You can also force the night mode on and get the same result. These are pleasant, with enough detail, low noise, saturated colors, and pretty good dynamic range. The exposure is great across all the scenes, although the results are brighter than reality. The photos we took without night mode are still quite good. The images are still detailed and saturated, but there's a more realistic exposure and brightness, and deeper shadows. The downside is that you get more blown highlights. It's also worth noting that this is the case where you get noticeably better performance than the Z Flip 3. The photos taken with the Flip 4 are sharper and cleaner, with more visible detail and less noise. In contrast, if night mode is on, there's not a lot of difference, just that the Flip 4 offers a different take on the colors. When shooting with the ultra-wide in the dark, there's also support for auto night mode. It produces bright photos with good dynamic range and saturated colors. The amount of detail isn't great, but is usable. If you disable the night mode, you get a more realistic exposure and dynamic range. You get less resolved detail though, and the colors take a hit. Selfies from the 10 megapixel inner camera are nice, with a good amount of detail, proper exposure, low noise, and likable dynamic range. But since this phone is foldable, you can shoot selfies with the rear cameras, using the cover screen as a viewfinder. The new model supports portraits, and you can opt for shooting in the camera's native aspect ratio, instead of getting square photos like the Z Flip 3 did. By default, the cover display gives you a cropped view, but if accurate framing is important for you, a double tap will zoom out and give you a full view thumbnail, something not possible on the Z Flip 3. The selfies we shot with the primary camera are lovely. The subjects are very sharp. The dynamic range is great, and there's great contrast and colors. And on top, you get a natural bokeh too. Ultra-wide-angle selfies are possible if you need to take a group shot. Just be sure to hold the phone as far as possible, otherwise your subjects will be out of focus. When recording video, there's electronic stabilization available on all of the cameras. The main cam can record in up to 4K at 60 FPS. The video quality is excellent. There's a lot of resolved detail with natural processing, excellent contrast, true-to-life colors, and good dynamic range. The 4K videos from the ultra-wide are great. They also offer plenty of detail. Sharpness is good for this sort of camera, and the colors, contrast, and dynamic range match the main cam. So that's the Galaxy Z Flip 4. It builds upon the success of the Z Flip 3 and provides an even more flagship-grade experience thanks to the new chipset, the larger battery, faster charging, and a more capable main cam. If you're coming straight from the previous generation, then it's probably still too similar to be worth upgrading to. But if you're interested in getting maybe your first Samsung foldable, this is the best Z Flip yet, and it's worth recommending. Thanks for watching guys, stay safe and see you on the next one.